It wasn't too difficult at all to harvest it. Obviously, we're pretty lucky that the sugar drip was high, so obviously we got some sunflowers in the mix as well, but basically they were the only two real things that were coming into the header. So anything else that was in that multi-species mix was below the height that we were harvesting at. So,
had you planned that?
Yeah, I didn't, I mean, never having done it before, didn't know enough about what we were doing, but obviously figured that the less material we've got to put through the header to try and separate out, the better. But also mindful that we needed to try and create a sensible sort of a multi-species mix as well. So yeah, from an actual harvesting point of view, quite easy to set the header up, no different to, we didn't change any settings when we went to the monoculture. So just basically set it for sugar drip and away we went. So, and we certainly got some sunflowers in that, in the sample, but they'll grade out easy because they're a lot bigger seed than a sugar drip seed. So there won't be any problems to sort that out through the grader, yeah. But yeah, look, it harvested well. There was no, it stood really well. So I guess it compared to the monoculture crop, it stood nicely. The monoculture crop got blown over in a bad storm, and that created all sorts of havoc to try and harvest it because there was so much material. Because the crop was so high, it grew 8 foot tall and taller. And when it lays over like it did, you're obviously then taking probably 6 foot of that plant through the header, as against the multi-species, we were probably only taking 2 or 3 foot through. So a lot less material going through the header in the multi-species. A bit less grain too per hectare, but generally speaking, the equivalent area, 7 tonne off the multi-species, 10 tonne off the monoculture. So yeah, it wasn't too shabby for yield. I thought it was quite good. Quality looked fine. I don't think the sample in the header was any better or worse either way between the two. So I don't think there was any quality issues with the seed or differences, obviously.
The actual size of the heads, were they about the same, or was it a little bit smaller in the...
Yeah, it's a bit hard to probably quantify that. I mean, the multi-species, we didn't get a great strike. Well, obviously because of the flood water and everything else that happened. So we didn't have the plants per hectare there that we should have had, that we aimed for. That's certainly not what we planted, put it that way. In the monoculture one, we did get a good strike, so we had the plants there. So I guess normally you would expect the thinner plant stand to probably put a bit more on, which, as in stool better heads, etc. But bear in mind, the multi-species had a lot more going on than just trying to grow a sugar drip crop. It was trying to grow everything else as well. So I would say it was pretty difficult to pick any difference between the actual size of the heads in both. We had a lot of insect pressure in the way of midge, and that was because, I guess, basically both lots of crops were probably 6 or 8 weeks throwing heads out, filling grain. So it's such a long period for midge to get into the sorghum head, or into the head, where sorghum is a lot quicker. Sorghum will sort of come out, do its thing within a fortnight, you're pretty much done. You might get a few earlier ones and a few stragglers, but so within a couple of weeks, you're pretty much done and dusted and safe with midge, whereas this stuff just goes on and on and on. So you're exposed a lot longer to having that midge damage. So
that's just planting sugar drip though?
Yeah.
Not because of the situation with the flooding and...
No, that's right, yeah, no, that's just a maturity issue at the other end. And I was kind of hopeful that maybe we would have had a little bit less insect pressure in the multi-species as against the other, maybe because there was a bit better plant health there, etc. But couldn't, I mean, it's hard to quantify that sort of thing, but certainly we got a lot of damage in both crops, so it wasn't great. But if you thought you were going to try and spray for midge, it would have cost a lot of money to do it, because you'd have been spraying every 3 times a week probably.
Yeah.
And being a high crop, you've got to have a really high clearance sprayer, and even then you'd still do some damage to that crop. So you're almost at the point where you need to get a plane in all the time to do it. So yeah, it adds up, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What about the time aspect?
Time as in?
Of harvesting. Your multi-species took you...
Oh yeah, about half the time, yeah, like we were travelling twice as quick, yeah. So, and it's only because the other monoculture had fallen over and was such a big, heavy crop as far as leaf and material goes, yeah, where the multi-species wasn't as big a crop, but it stood up well, and we were able to cut above a lot of the leaf material and that on the plant. So we were sort of only taking the last few feet of the head and a bit of leaf, as against in the monoculture taking everything you know.
So how many times did you stop?
Oh, heaps. I lost count. I was sick of getting up and down the steps on the header, I can tell you. But yeah, look, had a lot of chokes in around the spiral on the front because we've got a conventional front. So yeah, you get enough of those big juicy plants going in there, and they were choking that up. So yeah, I was fairly regularly sorting things out in there. But yeah, I mean, we got there, but it was just a slower, more painful process, definitely. Yeah. I guess there was a couple of issues that probably happened there. We had a really bad storm probably 6 weeks or so, or 8 weeks before the crop was sort of starting to mature. So we had heads out, but still green, and the plant obviously very green. It really damaged a lot of that monoculture crop. I don't know whether we didn't get as much wind on the opposite end of or on the further down the farm where there was the multi-species one, but it certainly blew a lot of that monoculture crop over pretty bad. It stood up reasonably well again. It wasn't great, but I mean, it did stand up from where it was. I thought it was just about a write-off, but it certainly stood up enough that we could harvest it. But so yeah, I'm not really sure the full answers on it. It'd be nice to say, well, the multi-species stood up well because of a multi-species scenario, etc. I don't know really whether that was the case or not. We definitely didn't have as big a crop in the multi-species, even though it yielded quite well, considering the number of plants as against the monoculture. I mean, it was definitely less in the multi-species, but the yield wasn't ridiculously low. So yeah, I mean, it was a battle. Like, it was so easy to harvest the multi-species where it was standing up. We could just cut, I don't know what we were harvesting, a metre or so above the ground.
It wasn't as tall though, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, exactly. Like, and that was part of the problem with the monoculture. It grew 8 foot tall, and that's never great in a bad year. So ideally, probably the best crops we've ever had of sugar drip have been those sort of 5-6 foot tall crops, total height to the top of the heads. And this year sort of 8 foot, some I couldn't even reach, so they're probably 9 foot or so. So obviously when you get a bad storm like we got with hail and that in it, it blew it over quite easily, and then it was a problem to harvest, no doubt. It was a battle, but I mean, we got it there. But yeah, a lot of chokes in the header, just wouldn't feed in properly because you're trying to take a lot more of the plant because you're harvesting a lot lower. And yeah, it was definitely problematic, but we got there in the end, and probably harvested at about half the speed we were in the multi-species. Yeah.
Was there any difference in the actual size or quality of the seed?
Yeah, not noticeable. No, definitely no noticeable difference in any of that sort of thing. It'd be nice to think there was, but yeah, we couldn't pick it. Like on screenings and all that sort of stuff, size of seed, it was very, very similar. Yeah, so I don't think anyone would pick any quality differences really, as far as that goes.
And now with the multi-species, I'm not sure with the monoculture, but you were coming straight back in.
Yep.
With the
planter. Yeah. So we again have just gone straight back in, only because we've got the moisture to do it. In a normal year, you probably wouldn't have the moisture to do that. So this is now our third multi-species mix in this paddock in a row. So winter, summer, winter, and the reason we came straight back in is if we don't do that fairly quickly, all your wheel marks, so like where your headers run, etc., can go reasonably hard fairly quickly. So then you have trouble getting the planter to actually cut the slot and close the slot properly. As it turned out this year, it probably wouldn't have mattered because we had rain to follow it up, so it would have brought anything up that was exposed anyway. And we certainly had trouble closing the slot in this paddock as well, so it wasn't ideal. But so yeah, we basically the same day. I mean, we were planting and harvesting together, and just to try and obviously establish another crop, get that living root continuing on in that paddock, just to see where that all ends up. Obviously to feed biology and to try and keep that whole system fed and working as against bare fallow, etc. So what did you do with your monoculture area?
Did you go straight back in with a planter then?
No, we haven't. No, it's still bare at the moment. Oh, well, not bare. It's got the stubble on it from the sugar drip, but we haven't put anything back in there yet. No, and some of the issues there have been it's just been too wet. That's we were just lucky that we got all this planting done by about 8:30 that night. And it was raining about 2 o'clock in the morning. And since then, it's been a battle to try and get back in to do anything sensibly. And I guess we've concentrated on the other paddocks we need to get in order for summer crop, as against doing, going in and spending time on that sugar drip multi-species. We've got time on our side there, so we'll concentrate on the other things we need to get done first. Then we'll go back into that one. Yeah.
So what was in the planter? More multi-species?
For the winter crop.
Yes.
Yeah. So just basically wheat. I had some medics, so we put some medics into our monoculture wheat as a bit of a trial this year. So I'd left some of that in the system for the wheat. Also went in with some fenugreek in that mix as well. So didn't put a whole lot of things in there. Would have liked to have put more in, but wasn't probably as well organised as I should have been. But obviously, bearing in mind we've still got some of the carryover plants that have been there since the last year's winter crop. So whilst I didn't plant a whole lot, we've probably still got a few more plant families floating around in there anyway. So
so the cash crop then will be the wheat?
Yeah, if it gets through okay, yeah, yep. Obviously, it's probably something I wouldn't keep for seed this year. I think we'll just send it to a feedlot or somewhere and just see how it goes with that side of it rather than keeping it for seed. We'll probably just play it safe and stick with our monoculture for the seed side of things at this stage.
So have all the species come up? Can you see them? Or?
No, actually it's been pretty hard to find any. There's certainly, you know, we've got trefoil and those sort of things which I didn't plant. Medics and clovers have been really hard to find in there, and I think it's just because, again, we just got too wet after we planted the wheat, and I suspect a lot of them have drowned out. I haven't seen any fenugreek floating around too much either. So
that's not wheat though, is it?
Yeah, the smaller plants are wheat. Yeah.
Yeah, like the grass.
Yeah, this stuff here is your wheat. Yeah, but you can see a lot of yellowing on it. It's not too happy, so I don't know whether. Yeah, exactly. It's probably nitrogen. It's probably a lot of things in there, and this paddock's just been too wet to get in there and do anything with. I could have got about 2/3 of it done the other day, but ended up doing some other things instead. But to actually physically spray this whole paddock as one paddock, haven't been able to do it since it was planted because it's just been too wet at certain parts of the paddock. You know, has been the problem. So yeah, it's another challenging period, but hopefully things will turn around and come good eventually, you know. I'm almost tempted because I can see issues here with nitrogen probably, as well as being too wet, etc. I'm almost tempted up there to throw some sun hemp, you know, cowpea, just a whole mix of nitrogen fixes into that sugar drip ground, and actually see where that goes, see how it ends up, whether we crimp it, whether we plough it in as a green manure crop or what, I'm not sure, but just throw, because I've never grown sun hemp before, so I've grown cowpeas, plenty of them, but just to see how that ends up. The only thing is I wouldn't have a harvestable crop out of that, you know, I wouldn't have a cash crop as such, but we've got plenty of moisture. I could probably just go straight back in.
Your nitrogen will encourage your microbes to eat the carbon.
Yeah, as in the existing carbon that's sitting there now. Yeah,
the sugar drip
definitely. And I mean, we traditionally haven't had a problem with our stubble going. It's always gone pretty well because obviously we've got a reasonable amount of biology there doing their job. So it's not like we get, you know, 6 months after we've harvested a crop and we're going, oh man, how do we handle all this stubble? Because it's pretty well gone, you know. So we've obviously got reasonable activity there, but it's just about trying to enhance that, I suppose, as we go along.
So do you spray any microbes out?
Yeah, yep.
You do, so,
yep.
And that's deliberate to munch the stubble?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what we did at the end of the winter crop last year.
Yeah, that's when you say...
and this here as well, in the multi-species, yeah, we did that.
And it disappeared?
Oh, probably, yeah, I think so. Probably didn't need to do that, but, you know, you don't know. It's and only because I wasn't sure how our planter was going to go through what we'd crimped, how easy it was going to handle that situation, and how well it will, you know, whether we were going to have any issues planting into it or not. So that's why I put it on there now. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't do it. Well, it's not to say I wouldn't do it again. Obviously, there's benefits in putting biology in your paddock, but I don't believe we needed to do it to get rid of the stubble so that we could plant back into it. That all works fine. So it's only a case of if you want to put biology down, then go for it. But just realise that your stubble is probably going to disappear a whole lot quicker than you really need it to.
And the other thing is you can also put like a stimulant in so that your biology that's already there just gets stimulated and then
okay. Yeah,
starts it.
So what sort of a product's that?
Like worm juice.
Oh, right, yeah, okay, yep. See, which is what I was going to put on. Had I been able to do that nitrogen on the wheat, I was going to put a bit of Nutrisoil and Ian Laurie stuff